Welcome back. Today we're working on a leaf blower from Stihl. It's model BG-85. I got this on Facebook Marketplace for free. The person said that it wasn't working, so they were just looking to get rid of it. So today we're going to see if we can revive this thing, and I'll go you through the steps of diagnosis just so you can repair your own brand Stihl or a different leaf blower, honestly any kind of small engine. Because it is pretty synonymous across, and that's something I really do enjoy about working on things like this is if you want to get into repairing stuff, small engine work is definitely a good place to start. Very easy, very approachable, and you don't need a lot of tools, as you'll see in this video. So without further ado, let's get into it. So there's multiple things you need to consider when it comes to how an engine works. Things such as timing, ignition, spark, fuel, all those things. So we're going to go through those bullets together to see if we can get this thing back up and running. So we always want to start with the easiest thing, and that would be, making sure that there's fuel in the tank, and if it's older fuel, replacing it. As the fuel sits, it tends to degrade, so it's just a good idea to either put in new fluids if you are maybe getting this secondhand, or if it's been sitting for a while, I'll show you how to clean up the carburetor, because the ethanol can gum up the carburetor and actually stop it from working, which is why you don't want to leave fuel in these over the winter or whatever seasons you're not using them. But again, we'll want to start easy. So like I mentioned, there's a couple things we need to go through. The first thing is air. For combustion, and you use the spark and fuel and air to create the combustion process. So obviously air comes in through the air filter here and into the carburetor. So we want to make sure that that carburetor, or the air filter, is not gummed up. So I'll zoom in here. So the air filter is behind this box here. So as you can see on this specific model, push in these two clips. And just pull that out. And then right here is the air filter. So it's not too bad. These do get gummed up, and just like your HVAC system, I did a whole video on the whole importance of cleaning your filters, making sure they're fresh. Basically applies here, and I'll link that above. But yeah, so you want to make sure this is clean, and honestly you can use some compressed air or just bang it out. You shouldn't wash these, but if it's really bad and caked on, you'll want to replace that. So because this looks good, I'm not going to label this as the culprit, but I am going to quickly just wipe off some of this stuff with a toothbrush to clean it up. Alright, so fuel is checked off the equation, air is checked off the equation. There's nothing major here that would clog this up. So with those two things down, we'll need to now get a little bit more mechanical. So the next easy thing to check is the spark. So as you can see up here, this is where we have the spark plug. So not only would you want to make sure that this boot was well connected to this, the end of the spark plug here before you got started, but also we want to see if the spark plug is clean itself or in good condition, because that would also stop this from working properly. And I don't think that I can get my spark plug socket down there with all this stuff on there. Yeah, it's kind of a tight fit. So I guess we're gonna have to do some disassembly here. Pull this out a little bit. So the first thing we'll want to do is take off. There's not too much of a method of madness here, but we'll just kind of go in somewhat of an order. So first, let's take off this cover here. So as you can see, there's these these torque screws. And those are tight on there. Jeez. One out. See if we can get this other one. Jeez. I'll have to come back to that one. One down here I'll need to get. Man, whoever put these on there did not want them to ever come off. Alright, so here's a cool tip for you. Did you know that these Craftsman screwdrivers, the ones with the hex heads, you can actually put a 15/16 wrench on there to give you a little bit more leverage. So that's how I'm going to try and get this off. You could do the hammer method with the screwdriver like I did in my video where I replaced the resistance motor in my recumbent bike, or you could use a socket and Torx end. So let's just do it this way. And nice and easy. So it looks like we've got those off. It looks like there's one more here that we'll need to take out. Okay. Alright, so that one's a little bit different. Is more coarse in terms of threads than the other three. Alright, now, yes, now we're good to just slide that off. And there we go. All right, so now we can get to our spark plug a lot more easily. Take that boot and get it out of the way. And you also want to make sure that this boot is in good condition, because if this isn't supplying spark to the spark plug, then this would be the culprit. Alrighty, now let's take this off. And honestly, I'm debating here if I should take off this upper plastic bezel that is for the handle, because I won't be able to get a ratchet in there. Well, why not? Let's do it this way. So you could just use a 13/16 wrench here. What I'll do is I'll just take this outer shell off. I think that's it. I think it's just those four that need to come off. And this should just slide relatively easily off. There we go. All right, getting there. Now we should be able to get that off nice and easily. Ooh. Talk about tight. That actually looks pretty good. Well, what I'm concerned for when I see a spark plug, to make sure it's good, let's see here, is I'm worried about the gapping between the electrodes. Let me get a pointing apparatus here. What I'm concerned about is the gap between these two right here. So the curved part, which is the grounding electrode, and then the other thing that I'm concerned about is the center electrode. So we want to make sure that the distance between the center electrode and the grounding electrode is 2 spec with this engine, and you can see that in the owner's manual of your, whatever you're working on. I'll put the link for this specific blower in the description box, which I think this one's 0.2 centimeters. Yeah, or no, 0.02 inches, which equates to about 0.05 millimeters. So want to double check that gap, And then if there's any corrosion here on these two electrodes, that's what we're concerned about, because that will affect the ability of the spark plug to perform. And it's cheap and easy to replace the spark plug. I have a video on that I'll put in the card to the right. But another thing you can do just to get you by to see if it's a bad spark plug is you can actually clean it off with a brass brush. You just want to be careful because you don't want to damage the electrode. And again, it's not a long-lasting thing, but again, just to see if that's your culprit. And I definitely have been able to finish mowing the lawn when I had to clean a spark plug that way. So this looks pretty good, so I don't think it's that. So the next thing on our list, since it's likely not the spark plug, is the carburetor. Like I mentioned, when that fuel sits, it gets all gummed up and can gum up the carburetor. And the carburetor is important to the actual timing of this whole ignition process because it takes the fuel in the air and works it together so that the combustion process happens. So if the carburetor is gummed up, then that process is not going to function. So I'm just going to clean this since we're here. Put that back in. And we can work on getting the carb out. All right, so now we'll take off those two nuts. These are 5/16. There's one. That should just pull right off. Beautiful. And I'll probably also clean up these parts because looking a little worse for the wear. Here's a gasket. I want to be careful with that. Looks like it is intact. If it's torn, you'll want to replace that, but mine looks good. And here's another gasket. She definitely seems like she's had a leak before. Jeez. Look at all that. All right. So here's your carb right here. You can see there's some lines going to it. That's obviously where the fuel goes and comes from. And then there's around here on the other side. This is how you can tune the carburetor. Right here are these two little springs. You can just use a flathead screwdriver and tighten or loosen them. And then right here is the throttle cable. So I'll zoom, pull you up there. So that's the throttle cable. And yeah, so let's get to taking this apart here and clean this carb. All right, so first let's disconnect this throttle cable. Let's see which way we can take it out from. We might need just pull off the handle here. Okay. So as you saw, it just slides off the shaft here. And now we can just pull this out. The only thing that we want to consider is, again, those little fuel lines. So I'll just pull those off. Let's see. let's take off this cover here where the bulb goes. And I did that so I could keep this line attached, just get it out of the way. So if you ever need to replace the bulb, that's how you do it. You can just pull this thing out. If it's cracked or ripped, put a new one in, cinch it back down. All right, so we got the one that was over here on the left side. Now we're gonna get this one on the right. This should just slide off, but it's never that easy, is it? Biggest trick to this is making sure you twist as you pull. Maybe I'll just pull this off. See if I can just get it out that way. All right. So you can see it right there. She's way up there. Alright, so I forgot to record, but all I did is twist the carburetor until it came off this line here. So that's it. So now really we're done with this. We can start messing around with this. But I'm going to clean this all off camera just so when we put it back together, it looks pretty. Well, I'm gonna hit the rest of this with some compressed air just to finalize it a bit. Biggest thing is just to make sure that you don't get any debris or gunk down into the engine. But yeah, I think this is looking a lot better. All right, now with my carburetor, you just wanna shoot it with some carb clean, or something that I actually found through YouTube was you can actually use WD-40 as a substitute. And yes, I know it's not the same thing, but I can attest that I've done it multiple times for cleaning out carburetors on my lawnmower, and it's always worked for me. So I'm gonna do that here just to kind of clean things up a bit. And that'll just help clean up some of that gunk ethanol that gets left over and can lock up the carburetor. And then I'll let this dry. I'm gonna dry for a bit and we'll keep going. Now of course, when you're doing all this, you want to make sure that you're not getting any of the outside dirt and debris into the carburetor when you spray it, so just make sure you clean that. And then next we'll just take off this cover here so that we can give it the best clean possible. And you can also use gasoline, obviously fresh gasoline, to clean it up too if you don't have carb cleaner. Looks good. Get the. All right. Well, I think that's pretty much it. Let's get to reassembly and see if we fix this thing. That one final clean here. So we can put this gasket back on. Alright, got that fuel line on, and we'll continue on. Alright, now we just put everything back the way we found it. Let's first get the carburetor on there. Just line those two studs up, just like that. And then we want to clean this off. Make sure that gasket's intact. All right, now that that's on, we can put on the gaskets. Before I forget, I'm also gonna get back the throttle on here. And it just literally, I'll show you here. The hole here, this is what we need to All right, throttle cable on. Now we can put on this bottom where the air filter sits. Notice I'm only I'm only using the head of the ratchet to tighten this, just because, you know, I'm not trying to heavily torque this thing, just enough to seat those gaskets and make sure it doesn't go anywhere. There we go. Getting to the end. Alright, now we gotta put on the upper, the bezel that covers the hand, or the handle. And we'll just make sure we don't pinch any of these wires. Make sure the throttle's in place, all that. Just gonna get this spark plug out of the way. That was the issue. I didn't have this control valve up. Just remember, if you put the handle cover on first, you'll need to use either a specialty socket or a wrench to tighten down the spark plug. Prime this thing. Let's see if we can get her to start. Alright, before I run this thing, I figured it'd be easier just to show you all of the steps I'm doing before I start, yanking on the trigger. So this is right out of the manual. But the first thing you want to do is make sure that you have the run switch on. Then the next thing is you want to squeeze. This would be like this. Squeeze the trigger and put this setting lever halfway. So as you can see here, that's where it stops and that's where it stops. So that's the middle. Then we've already primed it, but you'll want to prime the bulb a couple times. And then make sure that you have this on full choke. So that's where you can see here, this is where you mess with the choke. And then you'll pull it 5 times, switch it to half choke, and then pull it till it starts. So let's do that. Also, don't forget to put the spark plug boot on, or else you'll definitely be waiting forever. And it should feel like a good positive connection. Now let's get started. All right, here we go. So that's the video. That's how you repair one of these Stihl leaf blowers. Pretty straightforward. You know, this is common maintenance stuff, and you know how to basically replace the carburetor, change out and clean the spark plug, and change the air filter. So hopefully this video was helpful. If it was, I appreciate a like and a subscribe. Any comments or feedback are always appreciated. One more thing too I'll mention here is if you need to adjust the carburetor, or if you're getting this secondhand, I would adjust the carburetor to factory spec first, just to see if that also helps it to get started. So as you can see here on the lawnmower, it has an L here on the left and an H here, a 1 3/4. So what you do is these little black notches here. So what you would do is you would spin these all the way closed. So both of them, they're right next to each other. The left is the low, the right is the high. You'd close them all the way, and then you back turn them, at least the high side. So here, 3/4 of a turn, the low side 1 inch, or excuse me, 1 turn, and then that would bring it back to factory. You can obviously adjust once you get it going, but just in case the last person maybe didn't know what they were doing, that's also something to check out. So yeah, hope the video was helpful. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.